The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to Staring into the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Michael Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
Matt Brandenburg.
Serious all the time. No goofiness here.
Special guest, Patrick Barb.
Hello.
Who's going to join us in a conversation about John Langan's story, The Communion of Saints, which you can find in Children of the Fang and Other Genealogies by John Langan.
Yes, and even right when we get to start, I know I talked about this one, I think last year at some point. Amazing collection. You need to get it.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. And Langan has another collection coming up.
Right? I was like, yes.
and they're re-releasing Mr. Gaunt.
God, I know. I'm excited for that, too.
I still have the limited hardcover of Mr. Gaunt that Langan gave me for free.
Brag.
Fuck you.
Too much bragging.
I was honestly shocked. Like, I literally offered him money, and I was just like,
I don't want your money.
I feel bad taking this for free. But
he knows that's dirty money. He can't take it.
He handed it to him. He just threw it on the ground. He's like, ugh.
Blood money is what that is.
You know what, Mike? Don't get into my personal fucking business. But before we get into this really fantastic story, we'd like to kind of give a rundown of stuff that we've consumed and recommended this last week. I'm actually going to be pretty quick, but I finished a book this morning called All Men Are Trash by Gina Ranalli. And this book is tons of fun. It is very on the nose of what you would expect it to be, but you're not going to buy a book called All Men Are Trash looking for subtlety.
Probably not.
that's not going to happen. But
it's also been very difficult for the author and publisher to advertise this or talk about the work on Facebook because they consider the phrase "all men are trash" to be hate speech.
Yeah, but honestly, even with that, like I told you guys before the call, I was talking about the band NoFX on Facebook, and their bassist and singer is called Fat Mike, and I got put in Facebook jail for 12 hours for referring to Fat Mike as Fat Mike.
Which you should screen grab that and send it to him. I'm sure he would have loved that.
So either way, but I won't get too much into this book. I will say if the title All Men Are Trash kind of makes your ears perk up a little bit, and you're kind of curious about how this book is going to be provocative, I would say check it out. It's pretty much about a war between sexes of men and women, where women eventually get tired of men belittling them and doing awful things to them and respond very violently. And we see one night where a war breaks out between men and women and what happens to people caught in the middle. And it's really fun. I had a good time with it. It's pretty funny. And it's definitely getting some hate from extreme right-wing people, which is always something else going on with it. There's one review on Amazon that's 1 star, and it's just, this book is sexist against men. That's it.
Aww.
I'm like, I'll buy it. But no,
well,
it's
they tried.
Really fun.
Oh man,
it's really fun, and I do recommend it. It's pretty gory, so if you enjoy nice action, nice score, it's not as bad as Mike's book, Mass Hysteria, but actually Mike kind of topped that with his new one.
You mean Friday Night Massacre, available now on Kindle and paperback?
Very nice.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But it is a really fun read, and you'll find yourself laughing along with the absurdity as this book kind of escalates.
Very cool. Yeah, you compared it to Cockblock from C.V. Hunt, so like I am 100% on board. I want this book.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely comparable to Cockblock. It's kind of like a reverse Ladies' Night from Jack Ketchum.
Okay.
Ladies' Night is like where all the women it follows a bunch of men who are being attacked by women who've gone feral. It's kind of like that, only the women in this book aren't feral. They're kind of logical. They're just irrationally angry.
Nice.
But it's a lot of fun. I had a good time with it.
Awesome.
And Mike, what about you?
Well, we must have been on a similar pitch with the universe, because I have also been reading a book that is just absolutely hysterical, a ton of fun. I just started it yesterday, and I'm 50% of the way through, and it is One Tough Bastard by Adam Howe.
Oh, I heard good things about this one.
That's the one with the chimp and the gun?
Yes. This book is amazing. You know what you're getting into right from the cover. The cover takes Sylvester Stallone's Cobra movie poster and replaces Stallone with the chimpanzee. And the tagline is, one's a big dumb animal, the other's a chimpanzee. Shit just got real. And this is in the vein of 80s buddy cop action flicks, starring Shane Moxie, a washed-up 80s action star who is forced to reunite with his erudite, hyper-intelligent chimpanzee co-star from the 90s. They were in a movie called Copsicle, which was about two Stone Age cops, Shane and Duke, the chimpanzee, and they were trying to make a drug bust against a dealer who was peddling psychedelic pterodactyl guano.
Oh my gosh.
And they got trapped in an iceberg and thawed out in 90s New York. And while filming this, they had a lot of personality clashes, and the chimpanzee beat the shit out of Shane Moxie, and that pretty much destroyed their friendship. And now, 30 years later, they're reunited because of some kind of criminal conspiracy that is happening around them and may revolve around Duke's deceased wife. And it is just absolutely batshit insane. If you have read any of Adam Howe's stuff, you know what to expect. If you see the poster or the cover for this book, you get exactly what you expect. It's very much in the vein of things like the first Lethal Weapon movie, Tango and Cash, where you have these conflicting personalities that are drawn together to solve a mystery. It's very much like a Shane Black movie in print, and it's just absolutely hysterical. Shane Moxie is probably one of the most deplorable characters I've read about in recent memory.
Oh, nice.
This dude is just complete sleaze. While Copsicle is his big claim to fame, he hates that movie because of his resentment toward Duke, and his career crashed and burned after he wrote and starred in a movie called KK Cop, with cop spelled as a K, in which he played blackface.
Oh, no.
As a black cop who ended up having to go undercover as a white man in a alt-right Klans group to stop an assassination.
Oh, wow.
So he's a white man playing a black man playing a white man who has to go out of his way to avoid things like fried chicken and watermelon. And
wow,
it's insane.
I am pre-ordering this book right now.
And this movie just completely destroyed his career. It sparked riots in Los Angeles and is the film responsible for brokering the truce between the Blood and the Crips, who were doing drive-bys of every theater that was hosting this movie, until Universal Studios pulled it and burned all of the negatives.
Wow.
And Shane cannot figure out what the problem is. He doesn't know why his career has been so tarnished and why he's so hated. And he's just so full of himself. Like, he thinks he's the best action hero who has ever been on the silver screen. He's the sexiest, most handsomest, biggest, toughest action star in his own mind. His fashion sense makes Dog the Bounty Hunter look like a Maxinista. And this book is, in case you couldn't tell from the pairing of a washed-up 80s action star and a chimpanzee who speaks in sign language and has the ability to talk through technological upgrades. If you can't tell, it's a little over the top. This book is out there, and it is just a complete blast. I am having a very difficult time setting this book aside because I just have to see what's going to come next, and it's absolutely hilarious. So if you're a fan of those action 80 tough guy movies like Tango and Cash, this is absolutely perfect. It's a complete blast. And there's a lot of digs at current Hollywood past Hollywood action hero stars, like Schwarzenegger gets spoofed through a guy named Klaus Kiner, who escaped during the Cold War to become a bodybuilder and took Hollywood by storm. And it's hysterical. I am in fucking love with this book. It's a blast. And if you haven't read Adam Howe before, this is the perfect place to begin. So that's my recommendation. Go get it.
That sounds amazing. Well, I guess I'll keep on the crazy train. I did read 2 novellas this week, and one was The Pale White from Chad Lutzke, but that one's not as fun as as that.
It's a very heavy book.
Yeah, I would not put that one in the crazy fun category.
I'll save that one.
What fun are you getting up to, Matt? That's the question.
Yeah,
I'll save that one for next.
That book is a complete 180 from One Tough Bastard. And
yeah, sounds like it. But I did read another crazy book called Jailbroke by Brian Asman, and yeah, that fits right along One Tough Bastard, in which crew on the SS FedEx Amazon they go back and forth from Earth because it's just, it's like a delivery ship, and they're AI on this ship, and one of the AI basically eats some human and decides, oh, humans are really good to eat. I'm going to go on a killing spree and eat all the humans. And so the sous chef of the little cafeteria that only serves gorditas and half cyborg, half woman cop have to defeat this crazy human eating AI. And it's super insane. They go through and they're battling this thing, and it's this... it was the captain that went insane at first, and then you realize the ship's engineer is the one that's been orchestrating all of this because he's jailbroke. Because if you eat human meat, you become a jailbroke AI, and so you have to. So he's trying to figure out a way to destroy all the humans. And down on Earth, the reincarnation of Elon Musk. And the best way to discover if you're the reincarnation of Elon Musk is to discover his Amazon password. It's a 13-letter word. It's like Mr. Boobs 32 or something like that. And so so there's lots of battling. At one point, the engineer goes into one of the sex bots, which happens to be a space Sasquatch that has a huge birthing cavity, because that's what us humans are all about. Or Terrans. They call the humans Terrans in this book because humans are offensive. So the Terrans have a birthing fetish in which they climb up into the Sasquatch, and then the Sasquatch births them. And so this hairy Sasquatch is... Sex Sasquatch is running around chasing these two, and it's just an absolute blast. It's so out there. There's lots of crazy references to now, and like the chef at this gordita place is watching the 3rd reboot of Breaking Bad, and it sounds like it's just all robots that are playing the characters in Breaking Bad. So it's just this really craziness, and oh man, it's a blast. Brian Asman just has absolute fun writing this short novella. It was perfect break because, like I said, I did read The Pale White, and so I needed something goofy and funny, and this definitely fits that story.
Yeah, I have that
Jailbroke.
on my Kindle. I got to get to it soon, especially because I'll get to my other reads soon, but I need something fun to balance what I've been reading. Yeah. But Patrick, any recommendations from you?
I don't have anything that out there as you guys have recommended, and my reading piles of books are continuing to grow. I'm in the middle of a lot of stuff, but I think the most recent thing I read, not as funny, Worse Angels by Laird Barron.
Yeah.
His third Isaiah Coleridge book. I think, I'm a big fan of Barron's work, and seeing this series kind of grow from being more straightforward crime to have the kind of dark elements of his other fiction sort of come into play across that series. It's been really, really fun to see. I think it's, I described it to somebody as sort of the decompressed version of his short fiction, where you have a kind of tough guy protagonist going up against sort of like cosmic forces. And so I think this is the book in the series where it really kind of goes all in on that approach to the story.
Yeah, he pulls in some weird fiction moments with that one.
Yes.
I think it was, I don't know, what was it, that robot thing in the tunnel? That was kind of creepy.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah, so I always like when authors tie in kind of their other characters and worlds into their different works. So he definitely dips into that as well. So it's a good time.
Yeah, well, those books are great.
Yeah, because like those ones are I don't want to say mainstream, but you could find them at more chain like stores. And
I bought Bloodstandard at Walmart.
Yeah, so see, like you can find all of these, but the nice thing is it's like he's like getting them a taste. So then the people are like, by the third book, they're like, man, I need to read more of his weirder stuff. And so it's pretty genius planning. I don't think he planned it that way, but pretty genius, like first taste is free kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just slowly digging us deeper and deeper. I mean, the Croatian and the second one, that one was quite terrifying, especially with all the weird sound things.
Oh, I absolutely loved that second entry. That one was fantastic.
Yeah. So no, I
think it was the Croatoan, not the Croatian.
Oh, that works.
That was the Croatoan too.
Probably. In my head, the words sound right, but when they come out absolutely wrong. But it happens.
You're gonna get us canceled.
I didn't say anything bad.
Fox News is going to have a big segment on us and why we're targeting Croatians now.
Tucker Carlson's going to have a whole segment about us.
Well, yeah, probably. Hey, that works. I do what I can.
So I'm in the middle of 2 books, but to add to our goofiness, I picked up a $1 erotic short story.
Nice.
Called Ganged Up by Ghosts. So I'll report back on that next week.
Woo, what's it about, Rich?
It doesn't really say, but I'm assuming it involves a ghost gangbang, so I'm here for it.
Now, do they have a living human that they're going after?
Yes,
that they're riding train on?
Yes, well, one of the tags. So what sold me on this was one of the tags they put on Amazon was like spit roasting, and I'm like, yes, no. I'm going to order this book. I haven't read it yet, though. I want us to add onto the comedy train.
Oh man!
But I'm in the middle.
The only train you're going to be riding.
That's true. I'm in the middle of 2 books right now, which are Dying Days 1 by Armand Rosamilia. I've wanted to read Armand for a very long time, and he was selling all his Dying Days books on Facebook for like $45 for all 9 of them with like swag. So I'm like, yeah, sure. They're over $100 to buy all 9 on Amazon. So I'm like, yeah, I'll pay you $45 to get all of them.
Yeah.
And it's really like, I'm kind of burnt out by zombies, But it's a really fun zombie story so far. It's nothing original. Besides, the only original part is the zombies are kind of rapey.
Oh God.
So, but they haven't got too into that. But apparently, when they're biting people, they get very randy, so to speak.
Well, this will be a good prelude for your. What was this thing called? Ganged Up by Ghosts?
Yep.
Is there something you need to tell us?
I found my fetish, man. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow.
Dying Days takes it like more seriously, though. Like it's not supposed to be like a fun, lighthearted zombie romp. It's pretty dark.
Okay.
Yes, I did have to use that word. But the story follows a woman who her name is Darlene Bobich, and the zombie outbreak begins to happen all over the country. And the first book follows her traveling from her hometown in Maine, like going down the coast of Florida because she wants to get south before it gets too cold. And the first book is like the different encounters she comes across, and most of them are with other humans and not zombies. And like how awful humans are being now that it's the zombie apocalypse as she travels like further south. So far it's pretty good. And I'm still reading the J.R. Hamashian You Know It's True book, which is one of the more bleaker things I've read recently. So far there's been 2 stories in it about suicide.
Yeesh.
So that's always a fun topic to go through. It's a heavy book. But
You're gonna need that Adam Howe book when you're done with that one.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna need something funny or Jailbreak. I have that on my Kindle too.
Yeah, I'd read them both. You're gonna need some detox there.
Yeah,
the Hamashian book is really fucking heavy, but it's really good. Like if you're a fan of a lot of the stuff you hear on Pseudopod, or you enjoy like the Lovecraft e-zine stuff, you'd enjoy Hamashian. He's a very good voice in like weird fiction. Very good voice in horror fiction, and he's pretty underread, but his fiction's really solid. Like he's a really great writer. But that's it for my recommendations. I surprisingly watched no movies this week.
And no manga. What happened?
And no manga. Well, okay, I'm reading JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I'm not going to advertise JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to the fucking horror crowd. Just going to say. But if you like manga, read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But yeah, no, I was going to try to watch this new movie called Miskatonic University, and they split it up into 2 episodes, but I didn't get a chance to watch episode 1 of it yet. It's the same company who did like From Beyond and Reanimator, and apparently it's very absurd and silly and lots of wet puppets. Which
is it new?
It is new.
Huh.
What is this on? Shudder?
No, you have to. So if you want to pay $10 a month to Full Moon Productions streaming service, you can. Yeah. Don't do it. Or you could just rent the movie for like $3 on Amazon.
Man, that sounds like another streaming service. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm not going to do another streaming service, but I will rent it for $3.
Especially like Full Moon. I mean, like, isn't all of that stuff on what is
Amazon?
It? Like, that or like Tubi, I think it's all on Tubi.
You have a lot of stuff on Tubi. I don't know. You get extra stuff like Puppet Master, Puppet Master 2, Puppet Master 3, Puppet Master 4, Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys. Like, who the fuck cares anymore?
They only went up to the first 4 Puppet Masters. There's like 5 more.
There's like 6 or 7 Puppet Masters. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I'm borrowing the DVD. There's 9 of them plus the Fangoria one. And I think like the 8th one did kind of what they do with us. I think it's Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, in which the 8th one is 90% all the old movies and then 10% new material.
And Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 has one of the best scenes in any movie ever.
As long as you don't mind the 30 minutes of the first one in that one.
It's garbage day.
But man, I don't know. Full Moon might be it might be a fun streaming service, but like if it's only 50 cents a month.
Yeah, I'm not paying $10 a month for it.
Yeah, that's.
But anything else on your end, Mike?
No, that was it. All I did was start this Adam Howe book, and I went through the entire Children of the Fang collection. So that was my week.
Well, I teased already, I read the Pale White, Chad Lutsky, fan favorite here at Staring Into the Abyss, and it's a great book. It is, like we said, it's a dark concept of these 3 girls age 9 to up, and that it starts out with them breaking out of the house or the room that they've been kidnapped by this crazy guy and basically uses them as prostitutes. And they get out. Right, first chapter they get out and they kill the guy, and then the rest of it's just them kind of figuring out what to do with life. Now, the youngest one, 9. I mean, she was born in this house, and the other the book is right there. I should grab it. But the other 2 had, one of them's the one that we're following has only been there a year. The other one has been there, we don't know how long, but I'm going to assume longer than 9 years. And so they're just like trying to figure out life and what to do. One of them wants to call the cops. The other one's like, well, if we call the cops, they're going to break us all up and we can't all be broken up. And there's a little bit of vampirism tied into this, but it's not. I think it was just a way to cope with being in this house for this long, because Chad doesn't play too much with that. And as we know from his interview on our show and just from everything else, he doesn't dig too much into supernatural. So I kind of had a feeling it wasn't going to be too vampiric, but it's very powerful, short novella. It does have a positive ending, which was nice. I was not expecting where it was going to go, just because the way it's set up with our main characters, mom and boyfriend, how we kind of get some glimpses into that world. And it didn't sound like it was going to be much better than, it's going to be better than where she was at, but not by much. So I kind of had a little bit of a fear on like just knowing the way he likes darker endings. I was like, oh, this is not going to end well, but it does. And I'm not going to spoil why, but it does. And there were a couple shocking moments in there I wasn't expecting. Not jump scare as much as just like, holy crap, I can't believe this happened. But man, it's a great book. It definitely recommend hunting this one down.
Yeah, Lutsky's his stuff, he doesn't hold any punches. He gives it all.
Oh.
And he's great, but
yeah,
it's good to have something light between Lutsky reads.
Yeah, that's where I was like, man, I need to read, because I also picked up, I just started yesterday, Todd Kiesling's A Life Transparent. Bloodshot Books just re-released that one.
Oh, I just started that one today, actually.
I started it last night, so it'll be fun to talk about. But I wanted a little break, because Todd definitely goes dark too. A little different dark than Chad, but still, I was like, man, I need something a little bit lighter. So that's where
I got a recommendation for you, Matt, if you're looking for something a bit lighter.
Uh-oh.
Go with Jack Ketchum, The Girl Next Door.
Shut your face. Well, in knowing Chad's love of Jack Ketchum, when I started reading this, I was like, oh no, because pretty quick we know what's going on in that house and what these 3 have gone. Like, we don't know details of what's going on, but we know enough to be like, ugh. And then knowing that he likes Jack Ketchum, I was like, oh man, I hope he's not like fully going Ketchum in this book. And I'm glad he does it. Going full ketchup.
Never go full ketchup.
You always got to go only 57%.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a great one. I don't think I'll do Ketchum right now.
Yeah, no. Anything else on your end, Pat?
Yeah, I'm reading Come Closer by Sarah Gran. So that's the other one I'm in the middle of. Interesting take on the possession trope, sort of first person from this woman's point of view as she's sort of going through these kind of changes of her personality and sort of unhappiness with her life. And so far, so good on the book front.
Awesome. Nice. Well, we won't spoil this too much, but we've had kind of a trend on the last 9 weeks of this podcast where we have one division discussion. So we'll try not to spoil too much for you.
Oh, it's fine. I'm I'm online too much to be spoiler free. I don't think that's possible in this day and age in which we live.
Yeah, it was getting harder and harder to avoid every spoiler or because we've been watching right after each episode, we've been watching YouTube videos on what all the Easter eggs and everything. And so now YouTube knows. And so I get all these messages like WandaVision spoiler ending. And I was like, no.
Literally, like when I woke up Friday morning, I was driving to work, and I put it on in my car as I was driving to work, just because I didn't want to have anything spoiled.
Yeah, especially for the last episode. You're like, and the way they've done the show so far, I mean, it's definitely like you don't want the mystery totally ruined. But
yeah, I was telling the guys before we hit record, is I was kind of done with the MCU after Endgame. Like, Endgame was great, but I was feeling kind of the comic book movie burnout type thing. And then this comes out, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm back in. Like, I am all ready for Phase 4. Like,
yeah,
you have me right back in.
Which they did a great job of kicking off multiple storylines for this new phase.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a linchpin to what comes next. They have set up Captain Marvel 2 and Doctor Strange 2.
And possible whatever else might happen.
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of shit. Apparently, it looks like magic is going to be the new big thing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward, as they position Doctor Strange and Wanda Maximoff to, I'm guessing, be the forerunners, the big front runners to this new phase.
Yeah.
Wherever they're going next with this.
You know, it's funny because that's kind of when they were getting the early kind of phases. The big talk was, how are they going to dig into kind of the quantum realm? So, because they knew that was going to play a bigger part in especially Endgame and Infinity War. And so that's where like Ant-Man kind of teased it. And then I think they teased it a little bit in a couple of the other ones where they were like, oh, you can do this thing. And so it's fun to kind of like now look back and see how they've like tried to build up to more comic booky kind of stuff, as opposed to just big dumb guys punching each other and a bunch of CGI. So so it's kind of fun to see them go that direction, because then they can do a little bit more of what they've done in comics. I mean,
yeah, well, I think those kind of more fantastical elements are going to become the standard linchpin behind the Marvel movies going forward. I know the next Ant-Man is going to be about the quantum verse. Doctor Strange is going to be about the multiverse. They're going to be bringing in the Fantastic Four, so I would imagine the Negative Zone is going to be playing a part.
Yep.
So they're going to have all kinds of parallel universes and alternate reality stuff they can play around with.
And then there's the Spider-Man rumor, so...
Yeah, and the Eternals, who knows what's going to be coming in from there. They're introducing new characters and new lore into all of this. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think we've got some fun stuff ahead of us. So, although I never felt burned out on the MCU.
No.
I was
the DC movies, on the other hand, did not take very long for me to get.
You guys going to watch the Snyder Cut?
I am taking the day off work for it because it's a 4-hour flick. So.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, they're releasing in hour-long parts.
No, they're doing it all as one movie.
Wait, they changed it then?
Yeah, it's going to be one 4-hour film.
Oh, I thought they were doing the because last I heard they're doing the episodic release.
No,
well, they figure
they do have. They've got like intermissions in the film, like title cards that are breaking it up.
This is gonna be something.
Yeah.
I have yet to see any of the DC movies. I mean, I saw Shazam and I saw Birds of Prey, but I haven't seen anything else.
I like Birds of Prey. I haven't seen Shazam. Birds of Prey I liked.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of those yet. I've watched the Snyder flicks. I do, for the most part, like them. It did take me a second viewing to kind of get into Batman versus Superman.
The director's cut for Batman versus Superman is actually better than the original theater cut.
It's far superior than the theatrical cut.
It still has the issues, but it's better.
Oh, Jesse Eisenberg is still an atrocious Lex Luthor. But
and there's still the Martha!
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of forgive that now, but it's not Citizen Kane by any means.
Well, it's Zack
regardless
Snyder.
of how Zack Snyder views it.
There's one Zack Snyder movie I like, and that's about it.
Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that was a great film. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, that one was good. I don't know. I couldn't watch it more than once. I I don't know. I'm weird, I guess. I just like
his movies are super macho and like kind of weird.
And
he has this like weird like tendency to put lots of lots of religious themes into a movie when they don't necessarily fit into the movie. And like he's weird. I mean, he's a good visual director. Like visually, his movies are stunning.
Yeah, for sure.
But
they just need somebody like rein him in a little. And be like,
he needs someone to write for him.
Yes, and like somebody to tell him, hey, you don't need to do to slow down and then speed up in every 10 minutes. And yeah, you don't need to be as macho. I mean, like it is ridiculous. It puts a lot of the 80 movies to shame at some point. We're just like, dude, I don't know. Like, and I saw the trailer for his new zombie one, and I guess I need to see more to figure it out. But my big question is because I don't know. Have you seen the trailer for this?
They're stealing money in the zombie apocalypse.
Yes.
Stealing money in the zombie apocalypse.
What is the point? And maybe he's going to make that the point of like, well, we're so focused on pointless paper that we'll even try to get it when we're in the middle of a zombie pandemic.
You know what other movie uses that same plot? The Train to Busan sequel that fucking sucks.
Because like, yeah, so I don't know. And then like it looked, never mind. I could go on a rant for that, but I won't. It's just like, dude, come on. I get it, but you need to just stop for a little bit.
Anyway, to get this back on track, WandaVision.
WandaVision was great. I think they stuck the landing. I do think that they wrapped up some things a little too quickly, and then they like let some things just sort of hang.
My main criticism is it doesn't stand on its own. Like I can't be like to someone who hasn't seen the Marvel movies before, hey, watch WandaVision. And like then by the time WandaVision's over, it's like, oh, I need to watch this to understand what's going to be happening in Phase 4. Whereas like I think it would work really well if it was not disconnected, but just had looser connections than it really does.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I'm not sure how valid of a criticism that is when you're 23 movies into this thing, and it's like,
hey man, there's people who still haven't seen Star Wars.
I know, but you also, I don't know. It just reminds me of like the New York Times bashing Avengers Endgame. Like, well, this movie doesn't stand on its own. You have to have seen, like, who is this Ant-Man? You have to go and watch his movie. It's like, yeah, this is the capper to 10 years of movies.
My criticism is if you're watching the movies, that's to be expected because they're the movies. I think a TV show, right, that isn't a movie, it's a TV show. It should work to try to rope new viewers in, as well as keeping viewers that are into the movies also into the show.
I think when you've made 23 movies and have grossed $1 billion, you don't need to worry about roping in new people.
Yeah, and I think
it's like McDonald's. You know, they've got the sign over 10 billion served. You're like, well, yeah, maybe I'll try one. I don't know. I guess
Well, and like to go on to that too is if you watch, say, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was so far removed that it felt like it didn't need to even have the title of Marvel at all with it.
Yeah. Like, especially like the first season where they were treading water before they could finally tie into Captain America. And then
exactly.
Like, oh, okay. Well, now these last 5 episodes, I have to have seen Captain America to know why this is happening.
Yes. Yeah. And even then it's just like, well, everything we do in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. have no agency in the rest of the larger universe. And it's like, okay, well, this is just a dumb show that, and like, I stopped, I think, after the 3rd season because I was just like, man, they're just kind of dragging out this stuff. Yeah. I know they made like 10 more seasons or something ridiculous like that.
Rich's criticism is one of those you can't have it both ways. It's one way or the other. Like they tried it, like Netflix's Marvel series referenced the movies, but were so disconnected from it. Like they couldn't even call the Hulk Hulk.
They tried to,
and then everyone who was a fan of these shows was pissed off. Like, well, why isn't it connecting to the larger universe more? And then when you have something that is connected to the larger universe, like WandaVision, you have people like Rich go, well, it doesn't stand alone. I'm a grumpy bitch, and I need to watch a standalone.
Where's my ghost erotica?
Right. No one's getting banged by ghosts. What even is this?
Do I
How do
need
you
to
call
read,
this TV?
to read the larger universe of the ghost erotica?
Okay, I'm going to so
Rich is going to hang up now, and the show is over.
The show is done.
No. Like I pay a lot of attention to like
He's
stupid
so fed
TV
up
shit.
with me.
Well, you call me a little bitch.
I did call you a bitch.
It's finally not me. Yay!
So the Netflix series, they wanted to tie into the movies. That's what they originally wanted to do, and even when they announced them, they said they wanted to do that.
Yes.
But Disney wouldn't let them because they weren't connected to Disney Productions. So they had to work around that. That's how that comes in. That's not the fault of the TV shows, which, if I'm going to say anything about the Netflix ones, they all kind of dropped after the first season. The quality of those kind of dipped pretty quickly, but they were still pretty cool. I was still happy to have them because I don't know. I just think like I prefer stories that work. Like if I'm watching a movie, it's a different thing. But if it's like a TV show, I really like things that work on its own. But that's just my big thing. The Netflix thing's a different story, and I think those worked better like that because those characters are street level characters that don't really have effects of the bigger Marvel thing. Whereas this is something that is a main Marvel character. So it becomes a little bit different. I feel like they're two different things.
Yeah, I think at this point when you have something that's tied into Marvel, you know damn well that it is going to be tied into Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm thinking because there's people who I want to introduce WandaVision to who haven't seen the Marvel movies.
Yeah,
and
this
it's
is
like,
not
well,
that.
here we go. Now we have to watch 23 fucking movies just for you to watch this TV show. You know what I mean?
Well, you're going to have to wait for She-Hulk and Moon Knight and Miss Marvel. Those will be your entry.
Moon Knight's going to be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But
Benson and Moorhead making a fucking Marvel show. Amazing.
That's my big thing, though, is like when I want to introduce some people to WandaVision, I can't because they have to watch these 23 other movies just to have that introduction to the show that I think is a fantastic show and more people should see.
Yeah.
That's my criticism.
I don't know on that end. They do a pretty good, like, because they picked Wanda, who only was in 3 movies or 4. So
but
I
if
think
you don't understand like the bigger picture of things, especially once you have the post-credit scene and how they connect to Captain Marvel 2. That's what it's going to be like.
Yes,
what?
but leading up to that, they did a pretty good, because like all we know of Wanda's backstory before this is what we get from whatever movie she was in, Avengers 2, and I think they did a pretty good job of skating that line, especially, which I think I had referenced earlier, maybe in one of our earlier episodes, but they definitely skated around not having any of the major players in this. I mean, there was a lot of times where they could have plugged somebody in, and I mean, there was a lot of talk about the fact that this major magical event is happening miles from New York, and Doctor Strange didn't even appear. So like they did a good job / bad job of skating around all of that and giving you enough of her story and the magic part of it, because like Agnes, she's not a player in any of the movies, but she seems like and knowing from the comics, she's kind of plays a bigger role. And also they did the fact that they had sword as opposed to say shield, I think was a positive way to do this. Now, what you could do, and which Disney Plus seemed to recommend after every episode, which is then watch Avengers Age of Ultron to get more of her background. But I think they did a decent job with that. But you know, again, I think we talked about this in the very first when the first episode came out, is if you did not watch the trailer and not have an idea that they're going to be more than just say the black and white, or more than just these commentary on different TV decades, it might get it would have been kind of confusing those first 2 episodes of being like, what is happening? But now that it's all out, I think it makes more sense. It would have been nice to see a little bit more, to have it tied a little bit more into stuff. And I know it's tying into future things. But anyway, I don't know, my complaints, to go back to it, is that they introduced a letter in a later episode that they don't reference again. So you're kind of still hanging with why did that show up and what did that mean? And you could take it as the director wanting to have this happen, but they could have given us a little hint. And then they wrap up the director's story so cheaply. They kind of build him up and then they just like, oh, never mind, he's taken care of. And you're like, how? Why? And maybe that will play later on. Maybe the sword stuff will play in later. But as of this, it felt like they only needed him there to introduce what he introduces, and then they didn't know what to do with him after that.
Yeah. Well, we'll get Falcon and Winter Soldier coming soon. So
yes,
the Marvel trains can keep rolling, and that was only 6 episodes.
It's only 6. Wow.
Yeah.
Rich,
are you apologizing?
I was going to. I'm sorry I called you a whiny bitch.
I accept your apology, Michael.
I didn't want this to be like our Beatles moment. Like, this is what ends the podcast.
Staring into the abyss.
Our Ramones moment.
Yeah, right.
I feel bad for Patrick.
I'm the witness to history here.
Yeah. He got
completely ignore our guest.
Got our first fight on Into the Abyss.
Yes.
Wait, has it been? I feel like you guys have attacked me multiple times.
But Matt, you don't count. No.
I'm the linchpin. I'm the one holding us all together.
Oh, you're not even Ringo.
Damn.
I see how it is. Hey, that's fine. I'll take it. I'll start my own band.
Yeah. Since we got all that out of our system,
Pete Best motherfucker over here.
Damn. Well, since we got all that out of our system now, I think it's good to move on to The Community of the Saints by John Langan.
Yeah, our actual reason for being here.
Patrick's reason for being here.
Yes.
Sorry that took so long, Patrick.
No worries. Not a problem at all.
We get caught up in our bullshit, and it takes some time to...
Sometimes, yeah.
He's like a teacher in a daycare room just watching the 3 kids fight over a stupid toy.
Yeah.
You gave us 3 stories to kind of choose between, and we end up going with The Community of the Saints. But why was this part of your list?
I think with this story, part of the reason why I'm here on the show is from winning second place in the Divination Hollow Reviews Horror in Hollywood contest for one of my short stories. And with that one is dealing with kind of folk horror and more traditional slasher horror. And so I thought this story, which I enjoy on its own merit, sort of resonated with that as well, with the kind of take on the giallo horror that John Langan's covering in the story, and sort of dealing with these different Hollywood monsters being used as disguises for kidnappings and murders that take place in the story.
I mean, I definitely see that, especially from reading. I was one of the judges in a competition, so especially reading with your story, I can kind of see a mirror between the two. The one about the haunt, I will not read your haunted script.
Yes, that's the one.
That was I can definitely see a connection between the two. It's been a while since I've read the story, but I still remember it. And then this one I never read before. I've had this collection, but I haven't gotten to it yet. And I feel like this is a story you need to tackle multiple times before you can kind of break it down, because Langan gets you like that.
Yeah.
But I will say this is to typical of Langan, it's a fantastic and strange horror story that has a giallo vibe to it. But I also love how like he's using real Hollywood movie characters as like the killers in this.
Yeah. Real quote unquote.
Yeah, quote unquote.
Yeah. So
yeah, great.
Yeah, I've read this one twice because I went through the collection last year and then obviously had to read it for this episode. And I picked up more with this one, but there's definitely a lot happening kind of, I don't know, behind the scenes, because like it what's interesting is the way it's kind of broken up. It jumps between these monsters and then it kind of jumps back into our detective, and then it goes like, so it kind of goes back and forth, and we get pieces. I think the non-monster bits, we get more pieces of Albany. This is based in Albany, New York, and I'll have to look up his character's name because I'm totally blanking right now, and I have the book right in front of me, and so I'm going to keep talking until I find it.
Colosso. Detective Colosso.
This is like Detective C. We get a little bit more about him each little section of his, and you realize how he's somewhat tied to this town just tangentially through his study of history and his kind of tie to religion. I think I'm interested at what we think of the ending and what that all meant, because I still haven't quite figured it out. And like, yeah, so it's still an amazing story, but it's definitely one, like you said, Rich, you have to like go through it like a couple of times to kind of maybe pick up all the pieces.
Yeah, I love Langan to death. He's a fantastic writer, and I'm probably not smart enough to be reading all of his stuff. Some of it does get into a bit more esoteric than I can always mesh with, the ending of this story in particular, but it does start off as a really solid procedural with a lot of weird vibes to it. It begins with an abduction that the mother claims her son was kidnapped from their home by Hannibal Lecter. Not Sir Anthony Hopkins, but Hannibal Lecter, the character Hannibal Lecter. Yeah. And they think that maybe this is a kidnapper wearing a mask. And then the next day, a judge reports a murder of his driver who was killed by the xenomorph from Alien. And then we get an attack on a nun by Freddy Krueger. So there's all these crazy things that are happening, and they're trying to figure out what's linked to them. And Detective Colosso is very much a armchair historian who is digging through the history of Albany and finds out that like 100 years ago, there were very similar murders, or was it his partner?
His partner discovered that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because, well, I'll let you keep talking and then we'll back up.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say that similar occurrences 100 years earlier.
Yes.
Who were people who were being murdered by saints or things that were coming in the form of saints that they feared. Yeah. So you've got kind of these neat plays on what's horrifying based on different time periods.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think, and maybe that was part of the like, I don't know if it was like a bait and switch to get you focused on this, because it is these almost a random assortment of Hollywood monsters, like they didn't pick. I'll back up. So with the Hannibal Lecter one, the last sentence of that section is they asked the mother of the person that was abducted, like, what do you call these? And I think he said movies, but maybe he said something else. But he's like, what do you call these that have this monster? And she thinks of them as documentaries. Yeah. He said they're real things. And so you have that. And then we'll skip over to Xenomorph for a minute. But then you have Freddy Krueger, in which he appeared, like this was their one where they're like, oh, we got this person because it's at this soup kitchen. there's people all around, so it wasn't like at a nighttime kind of lonely situation. And the nun, Freddy Krueger had kidnapped the nun, and when they were talking to one of the other ones, the nun was like, what is the devil doing outside of hell? So you have two abductions in which they both they believe that this thing is the thing, and like believe it's tied to like a real life thing. So documentary, Hannibal Lecter, the Freddy Krueger thing. But the xenomorph one, I was trying to figure out, because that one, the judge doesn't describe it, though I guess the nun didn't describe it as Freddy Krueger either. It didn't say it was Freddy Krueger, just said it was the devil. But like, we don't get where that sort of tie is to the judge. It was a xenomorph that came down and attacked his driver.
For me, it was kind of a reflection on modern beliefs. And when they look at the past crimes, those then current beliefs of things that were woven into the fabric of their community or their belief systems. Like 100 years ago, Albany, they were being murdered by these saints because that was very much at the forefront of their society as being kind of a religiously structured community. Yeah. And now in the 21st century, that religion has been kind of superseded by modern horror. Yeah. Like instead of worshiping God and worrying about the saints and going to hell and whatnot, you've got these horror figures that Hollywood have invented, and those have kind of replaced the biblical figures. Like, we're not really worried about what St. Michael's going to do if he catches us jerking off. We're worried about what Freddy Krueger's going to do if he catches us alone in a soup kitchen. You know? Yeah. So I think there's a definite reflection on religion and its place in the past versus kind of like our new religion of horror and movies, the things that Hollywood has created, this new mythology that we've woven into our own personal stories.
That makes sense. And that's kind of what I was kind of thinking, but I was just trying to like figure out if there was like a tie to what they were seeing and what was coming out. And so, especially when you get to the last scene, where maybe not the last scene, but the last section where they do find this shack. And I know we're jumping all around. They find a shack that they assume this is where the kidnappers are taking people. And right away, it's Jason from Friday the 13th movies is there. And even right before that was balloons, which I thought was very interesting that it was the balloons and then it was Freddy or Jason.
Well, this entity, whatever it is, it's kind of like It, where it takes on the appearance of whatever its target is afraid of. And we get snippets of dialogue, like Colasso's partner is clearly a horror movie buff. So when they go to invade the shack at the end, when they go to raid it, it's like, okay, well, what is Colasso's big fear? What slasher is he afraid of? And I think it kind of starts off with It, but then maybe this thing gets a better read on the partner and goes into Jason. Yeah. So I'm wondering maybe if Colosso is afraid of balloons and clowns and
yeah. Well, and that's what, especially with that. And I mean, it's like literally just a sentence that these balloons come out of this shack. But now that you kind of mentioned that with the It thing, like, I don't know. Do you think maybe that was partly what Langan was kind of riffing on? Just because we know, if you've read It, you know that that's what Pennywise does. So it's a very similar kind of concept. And even when we get this end idea of what this thing might be and the fact that it was 100 years ago, like instead of the 37 years ago or 27 years ago, that wasn't It. I don't know. Could it have been like his riff on that and just him playing with that kind of trope, but making it more about adults and a detective kind of story?
In my initial reading, like one of the first things that hit me was kind of the comparisons to It. Yeah. So I was a bit heartened because he does have these fantastic story notes at the end of the collection where he does talk about his inspirations. And it wasn't until after he had finished writing it that he realized that there were comparisons to It. So it wasn't something he had set out to do, but it did kind of end up being that response to It.
I see.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think there's the play with the entity preying on people's fears, but also what I noticed reading it again for this episode was the town history aspect of it, and kind of giving this sort of larger sense. And when you think about how the main character here is so tied into the history of Albany in the surrounding area, he almost becomes this sort of, to kind of get towards the end here and maybe spoil a little bit, sort of a perfect acolyte for whatever this entity is, because he is so tied into the history that he's maybe a better executor of whatever this mother figure, crone figure, what their ultimate purpose is.
I was thinking that too, especially this next time around, because when you go through, it's kind of three main sections about Calypso. And the first one is kind of how he's somewhat of a blank slate, where he's a detective. He hasn't moved up. People that have come to him or worked under him have moved up the ladder faster than he has. He's just been kind of stuck in this spot. And then the second round you find out, like, well, he did go to school to study history, but that was kind of leading to becoming a cop. But he talks about the fact that he spends all this time driving the town. He goes through and he pictures the town through the history that he's learned. And what's interesting with that section is the fact that he'll go to these kind of weirder, darker spots in town that are, say, under the highway pass, and he just imagines this area as what it was when Albany was first founded, and it was right on the Hudson River, and it was kind of before it flooded and they moved it out. And he specifically talks about the fact that there's a fog that always rolls in, and he sees it almost as like a runway, which, is a big empty area. And I think, again, that kind of plays into this emptiness. And when you get to the fact that he's going down into the bottom of the shack, he talks about being compelled and pulled and not having any agency, just going with what it is. So, yeah, I think we're getting set up for him to be this perfect, like, bowl to hold the crone.
I can kind of see that. Like, the story, I got kind of confused at the ending when I read the story. I've only read it once, but I definitely see the connection with Colosso and the city, and this whole concept of, like, the kidnaps and murderers that are happening. It's more people are, because going into the story notes, it's also like Langan kind of talks about how people like Lecter or Jason or the Xenomorph or Freddy Krueger are kind of our version of, like, the Wolfman and Dracula. So it's kind of like how those kind of play into, I don't know what I was trying to say.
I will say the ending, to go off of that too, is it does feel like the ending kind of happens pretty fast, and I think a lot happens in the span of like 3 paragraphs that you're kind of like, wait, I don't quite understand what just happened, and it almost seems like he's being set up to continue these kidnappings, possibly.
Yeah. I don't know exactly, but for me, there's a certain agnosticism that runs throughout this story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that definitely plays into Colosso. Like, you look at Albany 100 years ago, when they worshiped God because he was something to be feared, and the saints, and you would be really scared to go to Catholic school because the nun is going to break your fingers with the ruler. So that's going to be the figure that comes and kills you. And you look at Colosso, who, like you said, Matt, he is a blank slate. And he even has that kind of self-awareness where he knows he's a blank space, and that life isn't something that happens to him as much as it happens around him. And so he is a very open receptacle for whatever this thing is at the end. And it's something that he can find belief in, because it doesn't seem like he has much in the way of beliefs outside of whatever this is. He is something that's malleable and can be shaped.
Yeah.
Because because there's a whole section about him in church. He was raised Catholic, and then he
stopped believing.
stopped believing. And like and then even for a period of time, when he got married, he was like, well, this is what we need to do. This will hold our family together. And then it just, one random day he slept in, and then they was like, well, we're not going to go. And then it slowly turned into, we're not going to go ever. So I thought that was interesting kind of to show us. But then currently now he goes to church, but not to pray. He just kind of goes to think, which I don't know. I should have read the story notes at the end. I did not. But that totally reminded me a little bit of Matthew Scudder, some Lawrence Block. His detective would always go to the church to kind of think things through. So
I like how each of the Colosso sections just opens up with the same sentence. Detective Thomas Colosso of the Albany, New York Police Department is not a happy man.
Yeah. But yeah, and I like too that he put us, especially the Freddy Krueger one, he puts us in a place with nuns and has him working with a nun. I thought that was an interesting choice when you kind of look at the other two are kind of just really disparate from that kind of belief in that system. I thought that was an interesting choice.
I think it's almost like, with the first, the Hannibal Lecter one, it's like family and then work from the judge because he's worked with the judge, and then it's faith on the third.
Oh,
officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see it that way. Interesting.
Oh, you know what? It just came to me. Don't read any more into this.
No, that's good because
it's definitely an interesting proposition that as he gets closer to this case, it begins to circle more personally around him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for, especially at the end where they find the shack in the areas that he kind of was wandering for a long time. And the fact that like they didn't even think, I'm trying to remember, it was something along the lines of like they just came upon it. Like it didn't seem like it needed to be there. And the fact that they saw drag marks was the only reason they assumed that it was there. So that plays into that too, because that would be his fourth, thing, which was the town. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's interesting also the way with the monster sections, how, Langan's able to kind of get them down to their archetypes. So it's the cannibal, the monster for the xenomorph, the demon for Freddy Krueger, and then in the Jason section, it's like Mother of Tears, and it kind of reminded me of how Jason had his mother's head in the shack in part 3.
Yes.
And that's where he has the hockey mask and everything. And so it's not Jason. It's not necessarily the monster in that section. It's the crone, this kind of iconic figure at the end there.
Oh, that fits. That's perfect. And I love just even like if we step back and just look at the actual writing of this story, it was so well done because each of the interviews, well, except for the judge, because the judge interview focuses more on the drawing. But when they're interviewing the mother in the first section and then the nun in the third one, Langan does this great thing where the conversation is kind of wild. It goes a little bit all over the place, and it's just every once in a while that person that's being interviewed will throw in actual bits to the story, but the rest of it's like, oh well, we made meatballs in the morning and we got the spaghetti from Paul Newman, and that spaghetti sauce he does all this, and so it's awesome because it just if you've read him before, he can his style is just that. His style is really strong in building in these characters. I mean, you're with the mother for a page and a half, but so much about her just from the random conversation that they have with her. And the same for the nun. You totally can picture who this nun is because of these specific things that she's talking about. It was just really neat. And then I also love the touch with Hannibal, where they go into this apartment that was empty, the mom swore that's where Hannibal took him, and they just find a plate with a liver on it.
Yeah.
They're like, it's definitely his.
All I know is after reading the Xenomorph section, I want a John Langan alien book.
Mm-hmm. Right?
If our friends at Titan are listening at all, You need to make that happen.
We got a Tim Wagner one.
We did. So I see no reason we can't have a John Langan. They need to give him a big bag of money. Get him to write this.
Absolutely.
So, it'll take about 5 years, but it'll be worth the wait.
Oh, it'll be well worth it. John's listening to this episode and just fuming that we don't understand his story, and now Richard is egging him on about taking too long to write, and he's just...
He admits it.
No,
yeah, but you don't need to broadcast it.
He listened up to the Ghost gangbang and was like, no thanks, I'm done.
Like, well, someone's never read Clive Barker then.
Shit, I see.
Oh, man.
Why do I listen to these nitwits?
They don't know what they're talking about.
Poor John.
Yeah. So yeah, the ending, it is it's interesting, and it sets us up for something, because like our Callisto in this cabin, it steep downgrade and it takes them underground, and it's just this muddy pit, and there's a statue, and it creepy statue because it starts breathing and it has bubbles. Yeah, it has blood on it, and there's a bowl kind of dug out of the ground, and then he just, the next thing we know is he's awake and he doesn't know what happened.
But it does also fill his head with visions.
Yes.
So an important element there is that, this thing has given him evidence of its powers. So this is something that he can believe in based off of proof.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than like most organized religion where it's like you believe it because that's what you've been told to believe. Whereas this thing comes along and shows you what it is and gives you a reason to believe. And in turn, he thinks he can offer it more than just these reenactments of saints murdering people or moving into Hollywood era and using horror movie staples to get people.
Are you saying then that it was a person that was these three monsters? Or
I don't know how much of it can be taken as a literal person as much as a representation.
Yeah.
I think it's at least as real as Pennywise was.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go so far as to say it's like, Jim from next door was dressing up like Freddy Krueger and Hannibal Lecter and doing all this shit on behalf of this thing. I think that the creatures are more avatars of whatever this thing is and whoever possesses it or becomes enraptured by it.
I can see that.
Yeah, I think the idea there is that maybe there's this entity is sort of souping up whatever believability in these monsters. So, you've got the xenomorph seeming much more real to even a judge than it might otherwise. And so giving a little boost power-wise to whoever is the person, or if there is a single person who's taken up with the entity. And they talk about how in the past it was like a junk man or something who had access to all these things to dress up like the saints. But, it seems like whatever this entity is enhancing their powers or believability to be able to execute these kidnappings and murders that are taking place.
And also these creatures more than likely would have been something that the victims would have become afraid of during childhood or earlier in life at any rate. You look at the judge and you think, well, the Alien, that probably came out, the first movie probably came out around the time that the judge would have been a young boy or a young man, and that must have made some kind of impact on him. The nun and Freddy Krueger, that would have been something she would have seen as a child, probably, on staying up late in defiance of her parents, kind of like I did to watch Nightmare on Elm Street during the midnight movie run.
I'm gonna catch you there because she never calls it Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
No, but the cop does, and I think the way the nun that survives describes it is enough that based on the preceding cases that it was Freddy Krueger.
Right. But what I'm getting at is your idea of them seeing these things at a young age. If she had seen if she had seen Nightmare on Elm Street at a young age, she would have recognized it as Freddy Krueger. She recognized it as the devil.
That's being relayed to you by the other nun, not the victim.
Oh, I don't know.
My impression is that the surviving nun was older and probably already in the habit and wasn't a big horror fan.
I don't know, because
seclusion. I don't know. That was my impression.
Well, and I think that's the good thing. I mean, that's what you can do with a lot of Langan stories too, is kind of try to figure it out, because I was wondering that at first too, and then I was trying to figure out if it actually did, like, whatever this entity is, whatever the crone did, if that was went into a person, like the Pennywise isn't the monster went into Pennywise. So then if that's the case, then does that mean that actually a human and took some sort of form for all four of these? But I don't know. We're not really given an answer to that. I mean, it maybe because Calypso at the end has that tinier version of the crone, and it's sort of led to believe that he's going to do it because, like you said, he sees a vision, and a lot of that vision is violence and anger. So it's kind of like, well, does that mean he is going to go out now and take on different monstrous forms, which then leads to a whole bunch of questions because it's like, why did it take this long? Why did it choose him? But it is, because I was wondering that too. And that's why kind of earlier I brought up, I'm like, we didn't we saw what the mother thought and we saw what the nun thought, but we didn't really see the judge say it was a xenomorph from that movie. He just said it was some spidery monster, and then they drew the picture. So that's where I was kind of like, well, why did it pick these ones? And so that's what I'm wondering.
As far as why the crone chose Colosso, it's because he was that blank slate, it was able to fill him with its will.
Yeah.
I'd agree with Mike on that.
No, I got the feeling that, no problem. I got the feeling that, in the 100 years ago, perhaps the person who was possessed by the crone figure has this belief in the saints. The person, I do think it is one person who eventually dies as Jason in the shack, who believes in monster movies and in these modern kind of horror icons. And with Colosso, he's somebody who, because he's a blank slate, he can believe in the crone, or he can believe in the city. He kind of starts thinking of it as a representation of the city that is his source of belief. And so he's maybe as Mike was saying, a fresher start for the crone to do her will.
That makes sense. Yeah. Because that's, like, I think the hard part too with this was figuring out if it was a person, because they did hint at the 100 years ago, the communion of the saint killer kidnapper person. And they said it could have been him, but it couldn't have been him. They weren't sure if that person actually did it. They just said that he had access to everything. So I think that was an interesting thing to give us, because it does it, especially that line of like, it could have been him, it couldn't have been him, because that leads you then to be like, well, then does this thing just float around and take on a shape, or does it go into a person? So I thought that was interesting. And then the fact that it was 100 years and like we didn't get a reference to say somewhere between that time, and then if it is, like I said, with the Pennywise thing, if it's taking like a certain amount of time, why did it jump so fast into Calypso? I think is an interesting question to kind of figure out, like, well, what's the like, what's the reasoning? Maybe it doesn't need a reasoning, but why is it doing what it's doing at these times? Was it because it was flooded, and then that's why it couldn't take over until they cleared out the space? I don't know.
That wouldn't make sense, because if it was flooded, then people couldn't access it. It couldn't access the world around it. So maybe like cleaning up the flood awakened it.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a good story.
It's a really good story.
There's a lot happening in it.
I mean, obviously the crone ain't no Aquaman, but
Lincoln is a fantastic writer with a really great voice.
Yes.
Oh, completely.
I mean, every story in Children of the Fang is amazing.
Yeah, and he always leaves you with a lot to ponder and think about and mull over, because there's so many implications that you could try to unravel from this. And one thing I was wondering with Colosso, like, he notes at the end that he pledged himself to the crone, but it refuses his pledge of something else, something better. And that kind of makes you wonder, well, what was he trying to do? Was he going to try and use this thing as a force for good? Was he trying to instill on it something more positive than just randomly killing whoever? And it is rejecting that. And ultimately, what the hell is he going to do with this?
Well,
or what's it going to do with him? More to the point.
The other thing I thought was interesting is he talks about seeing a succession of bowls scooped out of the earth. So does that mean... That's an interesting kind of thought, because you're like, well, is that in multiple places on Earth? Is it the same place? And then if that's the case, who's doing the digging? So I don't know.
He talks about a series of faces as well, which sort of maybe implies that it's just the 100 years ago in this monster movie person. They were just really bad at kidnapping. So maybe there's been other ones in between that just didn't get caught. Just having these two with the saints and the creatures were just a little too garish in their approach.
Maybe.
Yeah. And that's what I was wondering too. Like and maybe we didn't need it, but maybe it would have been like a nice little hint that like, oh, we've had other missing people in the past or something like that. So like, cause I don't know. I mean, like we do get the idea that Albany has been, which that could be an interesting theory, because we get a top section where they talk about how Albany's been on a slow decline for a long time, and it's only had these sort of pockets of possibly getting better, but he describes it as like it doesn't matter, it's still a sinking ship, it just changes, it might raise up a little, but it's still going underwater. So is that a comment? And the fact that he loves this city clearly, and he pictured it as it once was, is this a comment on the crone trying to spur the city back into being a positive? Maybe that 100 years ago, and I'd have to look back through, I can't remember if 100 years ago it was going but down, and then this communion of saint thing, if that raised it back up, and now that keeps going down again, is it his turn to kind of bring it back? I don't know. A lot of layers.
It's like an onion.
It is.
Peel back those layers.
The Langan layers.
Also, Mike, you mentioned more about Colosso. Did you read the story notes at the end?
Yeah, he appears in another story as a retired policeman
who now owns an antique shop.
Yeah. What? I wonder, a little Needful Things going on there?
Maybe. We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hunt down this story. Maybe it'll be in his next collection.
It's probably going to be in his next collection, but it's in the book Behold, Odysseys, Curiosities, and Undefinable Wonders.
Oh, yeah, that's I think that was, I think that was a Crystal Lake?
Yep, that's Crystal Lake.
I think I might actually
you can read that story in that anthology, or it's probably going to be in his next collection.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious to see what comes of that, how much connectivity there is between this story and that one. Yeah. It sounds like Colosso appeared in a preceding story also, if I was reading this right.
Yeah, I got the same impression.
Probably. I need to go back into other Langan stories and see if I can find them.
Yeah.
Langan Marathon. Go through all the Langan stories.
Matt from the Valley encouraging you.
Duh.
Only read Langan from now on.
Langan all the time.
24/7.
365 days a year.
Get like a Langan streaming service.
Okay. This is suddenly turning very creepy.
The consuming Langan.
When you get a cease and desist, Richard will understand why.
Langan creeping across the earth, consuming us all.
Slowly, all becomes one with the Langan.
Reaching from the dark void of nothing to something to everything.
We're all going to get calls. Can you please leave him alone?
We are all Langan now.
Every one of us.
We'll never be able to go to conventions that he's at because we'll be too close. We'll be within the 50 feet or 50 yards.
He's got to travel with bodyguards.
I'm on Langan's WordPress right now.
Oh God!
I just want to say,
you know
exactly what I'm doing.
You're trying to find his address, aren't you?
Yes. He's like, not trying, succeeding.
Exactly. No,
I'm hacking into his WordPress now.
So Word Horde Press is putting out Corpse Mouth and other autobiographies this year. And also, they're re-releasing Mr. Gaunt.
Yes.
So both will be put out by Word Horde Press this year. And hopefully that'll have everything current with Langan. So we're not missing any Langan stories yet. Unless he has other unpublished stories that are going to be published, and then we have to wait for another collection.
If they're out there.
I'll find them.
Have you guys read The Fisherman?
Yes. Loved it.
Matt?
Yes. Oh, I loved it.
Patrick?
I have not yet. It's on my list.
It's so good.
That's what I hear.
What I love, and I noticed it a lot in Children of the Fang, is that he is kind of the master at telling the story within the story. And that's Fisherman is the perfect example of that, because it's a story and then there's a story within that story that takes up the most of it.
That's a fascinating backstory too.
Yeah. And that's the same. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know there's a couple of stories in Children of the Fang in which we are getting a story within a story. And I love that kind of look and play, because it's kind of fun to see both things happening.
As a whole, this is a great collection. There were a number of really, really good stories in here that stood out for me. In fact, there was one that's about a flooded Earth that I was wondering if maybe it was a bit of a sequel to The Fisherman.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember. And does this one have the one about the people? I can't remember if it was him.
It does have stories about people. That's right.
Hey, now, the one where about the people, they're supposed to be going to heaven, but then you realize it's not really heaven. It's like a giant monster eating them.
Yes. This one does.
Yes, I love that story where it's like the one guy I kept thinking about it actually when I was watching Soul. It's like the whole concept of that one too is like they're on this escalator kind of thing going to where they need to go, and then I was like, oh man, it's the same thing as in the Langan story, except the one guy breaks loose and realizes when he turns around that it's just a big monster that's just sucking everyone up.
Oh man, we need a Pixar Langan story now.
Yes, we do. Oh man.
And he does another amazing, and it wasn't in this, it's in one of the best ofs, where he does a cool interpretation of Peter Pan and Captain Hook.
Well, they can take that Ligotti story that he writes in here and turn that into a Pixar flick. I think that would be a perfect match with the tone and style. That's totally Pixar.
Wait, was that the manuscript one?
Yes.
Yes, I love that one.
Oh, that was brilliant.
I love it. And we've talked about this a couple of times, especially on our Ligotti story. I love how both Laird Barron and John Langan would both lampoon Ligotti in a different ways.
Yeah. The one that I liked was his riff on Stephen Graham Jones with the story Muse in here. That was fucking hilarious.
Which one is that one?
It's called Muse.
I know, but what is happening in that one? I assume it's called Muse when he said it's called Muse.
So they're at a convention, and Paul Tremblay has invited John Langan to give a talk about Stephen Graham Jones, and he has to decline Paul's offer and writes him a letter explaining why, and how at another convention he was with Stephen Graham Jones and was talking to him about how he gets his ideas and how he became such a proficient writer. And Jones leads John back up to his hotel room, and there's this creature up on the ceiling that Jones like, that's my muse.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I remember now.
That was brilliant.
Especially
considering the introduction Jones writes for him. It was a nice little stab in the back for him.
I need to dive into this collection. I'm thinking I might start it this week.
Yeah. I think the Legati story, Rich, is Into the Darkness Fearlessly.
Ooh.
Which the opening line for that, I'm not going to read the whole line, but the first part of the line is, the morning after the police found the final piece of Linus Price. How do you not want to read more of that?
That's true. That is a good opening.
That's a hook right there.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for joining us today, Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun.
I know you have that story that was in the Divination Hollow contest. Is there anything else that you have coming out in the future?
In the future, I've got 2 stories coming out in Boneyard Soup magazine in their April issue and then in their October issue. Nice. And just recently, I had a story in Sci-Fi and Scary's Twisted Anatomy body horror anthology, and a story in the Shiver, the chilling horror anthology that Nico Bell put out in, I believe it was January.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today and for picking this story. It was pretty eye-opening to read.
Absolutely.
And putting up with our fight.
Yeah.
No, you know
bullshit.
I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old downstairs. So, the fight's going on downstairs right now while I'm talking to you guys. So this is sort of child's play comparatively,
I bet this was not the prize you were expecting from Divination Hollow.
I'll take it though. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, we're glad. And where can listeners get in touch with you?
I am on Twitter at @PBarb, BARB, and my website is patrickbarb.com.
All right. And Matt, what about you?
I'm on Twitter at BrandenburgDM.
And Mike?
You can find me on Twitter at MikeH5856. Website is michaelpatrickhicks.com. And out now is the anthology Far From Home from Off Limits Press, featuring my story, A Song of the Earth, which I must admit was a bit inspired by John Langan and David Peake, who we've discussed previously. So if you liked this conversation, pick up that anthology and check out my story.
Yay! And also, if you like this conversation, be sure to visit us again next week when we talk to Asina Palaeo, revisiting the story that Matt has forgotten about, Where Are You Going and Where Have You Been? By Joyce Carol Oates.
I remember it now.
And it will be an Abyss first. We are revisiting a story that we have covered previously.
An actual Abyss first.
An actual, not just one that I have made up at random as being an Abyss first.
Yeah. It's funny because we even said it in the episode, and then you still put it out and said this was up first.
Well, I don't listen to you.
Don't you listen to the episode?
Not while I edit it.
Oh, man.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on all the platforms. We're available wherever podcasts are. You can comment, you can review, which is very important. We want to make sure the Abyss goes out and consumes all. You can follow the Abyss at Into Staring and follow me at Rudy53088. And this is Richard Gerlach saying keep staring.
I'm Rob.
I'm Slim.
And I'm the Lamborghini himself, baby! Yeah!
The Rob and Slim Show is a weekly comedy show with an hour and a half of happy horseshit, followed by 4 half-hour interviews with actors, authors, and more.
Scott Baio loves us.
And I smear shit on my stomach in the bathtub! Fuck yeah!
Catch us live every Wednesday, 6 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on IPMNation.com/live2 or Facebook.com/Rob and Slim.
Or listen to the Rob and Slim Show on Podbean or iTunes, baby! Yeah! I just shit my fucking pants!
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.